Yeah. Well, I'm very delighted to introduce you to my new friend, because we have become friends over the time we worked. We've been talking 2.5 years about the collection during COVID, and then we started to work on the exhibition. I want to introduce you to Steven ten Thije. He is philosopher and a curator, which is a very interesting mélange. He's in charge of the collection of the Van Abbemuseum. He's a young person to do that. He has a very young but beautiful mind. I think he will go very far in his career. I highly recommend the story he tells in the book, and I'm dying to know what he's going to say. Steven, come and join us.
Thank you very much, Liedewij. What a beautiful way to be introduced. Thank you very much. And what a pleasure to be able to join you this afternoon, which is a remarkable afternoon, not only because we have a remarkable exhibition, but also because it's remarkably hot here in the Netherlands. I'm in a t-shirt today, whereas it's November. It's crazy, which is also disconcerting, but it's what it is. What I wanted to do is share a few thoughts about, in a way, the discussions that Liedewij and I have had in the last years about the acquisition of her collection. And I have some images to accompany that, so I will see if I can share my screen. And then I will do that here. Like this. So, are you seeing my screen now?
Yeah.
Yes, perfect.
Good. Fantastic. This is the selection of, I think, not everything, but a large part of the 53 objects that Van Abbemuseum is trying to acquire from Liedewij. And this is a very substantial moment or significant moment in the history of the museum, because it's the first time in its 86-year history, the museum was founded in 1936, that the museum will acquire a substantial collection of design. There are several reasons why we think the time is right now to make this step, and I wanted to share some of them with you. And maybe first say that it's significant not only because it's the first time in the 86-year history that we start to acquire design, but also because in the Netherlands, it's every museum has a fixed collection profile. And this is monitored by the state to avoid competition between museums or museums becoming too much alike. And so therefore, if you want to make a change in your collection strategy, you need to have good reasons to do so. And you need to convince not only yourself, but also your surrounding, your stakeholders, that this is the necessary step to take. So when we were approached in 2019 by Anneman Geurts from the Kazerne, if we were interested in the collection of Liedewij, we looked at the collection and had some internal discussions, and then felt that all the stars were lining up in the right constellation, and that maybe now was the moment for the museum to make this shift. It was a shift that was already in the making somewhat, because we, in the past 10 years, were working on in a certain direction in which we had worked more and more with artists that were very politically engaged, and artists who as a result of that engagement often also wanted to not only produce work for the gallery, but also wanted to produce change in society, and for that wanted to leave the gallery and be really active in society. And in that way of working often already made things that could also be understood as design or social design or that kind of practice. So it felt more and more, let's say, incorrect or not really fitting that we were not really also acquiring design or collecting design. However, there was also another reason why we wanted to make that shift. And well, one very obvious reason, of course, is that Eindhoven is a design capital of the Netherlands, and therefore presenting, being the museum of the city, it makes all the sense that we have a collection of design. And what better way to start that collection than by acquiring part of Liederwijs collection, who was such an important director of the Design Academy between 1999 and 2008 here, and had played such a major role in the development of the academy, but also in general of the field of design within the Netherlands and internationally. But there was also another reason why we wanted to make that step, and that is the thing that I would like to say a bit more about, where I also have some perhaps somewhat mysterious slides to accompany that. Because what happened in the moment that we make that change is of course also very important. If we were to start to collect design in the 1950s, we would do it in a completely different context than we do it now today in 2022. And the context in which we do it today is that you're looking here perhaps at the not most inspiring images, but you're seeing a graph, and that graph in a way marks the museum miracle of the Netherlands in the second half of the 20th century. What you're looking at is the increase of visitor attendance in the second half of the 20th century. And this is an increase that was realized in a way in parallel with, let's say, the general prospering and emancipation of society in this phase. Because in the Netherlands, the Dutch government only started to really seriously support support art institutions after the Second World War. And when it started to do so, it also started to support general education in a much higher degree or a much bigger spread. And the result of it is that in a way society changed and transformed and turned into a society in which much more people had theoretical education, and also in which there were much more facilities for people to be inspired by art and culture. And you can see that in this enormous increase. It was 2.5 million visits around 1950, and it's now up to 30 million visits a year post-Corona time. I'm telling you this because in a way, this is the public, and this is the context in which we are making that shift, and for whom we are making that shift. At the same time, when we were doing that, another thing also happened. You're looking here now at two images, which you've probably guessed not, but on the left side, you see the collection of the Van Abbemuseum. On the right side, you see an image of the current inhabitants of the city of Eindhoven. And in what way do these two maps represent that? On the left, you see a map of the place of birth of the artists that are collected by the Van Abbemuseum, and on the right side you see the place of birth of the current inhabitants that are living in Eindhoven. And it might be obvious that these maps are not the same. The collection is very European, North American, and in that sense very Western, whereas the city now is very international and global and has over 180 different nationalities in its area. This poses several questions to the museum. One of them is that if this is the city that we are serving, then only a small section of that city is recognizing itself, its culture, cultural heritage in the collection of the Van Abbemuseum. So if it wants to create a collection that somehow has points of identifications for the different inhabitants of Eindhoven, it would need to, in a way, change its collection strategy radically. You could imagine that if we would found, I don't know, €1 billion, and we would go all over the world and we would buy all kinds of art, then maybe in a few years we could create a collection whereby the two maps somehow start to mirror with each other. However, it's a question if that is really possible and if that is desirable. Because if we start to do that, it would mean that we would start to acquire an enormous amount of art, and all this art would then needed to be shown in a building that doesn't grow as much as the collection grows. So in a way, we would be able to have a lot of art, but we would not be able to show it. The second part of it is that we would start to acquire artworks that perhaps are very valuable to the community of origin and would displace them to Eindhoven, where we have deeper pockets, and as a result, in a way, somehow economically steal heritage from one place to the other. So the question that we have as an art museum is, now that we have this beautiful context in which people are well educated and are attending museums, is the goal for that museum for the public to be represented completely in this way, as let's say that the museum presents somehow world art history in a comprehensive form to its public, or should we do something else if we cannot do that in that way? And I think one of the chances or opportunities that we have with the acquiring of the design collection and the collection of Liederwey is that in a way that is an answer to that question, because under current conditions, I think if we cannot in a way continue to collect art in a way that we represent all of art history, we have to ask ourselves the question, what do we do then? What is our goal? What is our purpose? In what way can we serve the community? And I think the answer that we find to that question is that what we need to do is not so much be able to represent all of cultural history, but we need to be able to be a site of inspiration where people can find ideas, can find inspiration, thoughts, also provocative ideas that help them think the world differently. And if you want to do that, it's not about representing static history in a homogeneous manner, but what is important is people are able to translate all the artistic ideas that they encounter in the museum also into a useful form, in a way of living, in a way of behavior, and that therefore the threshold between, let's say, pure imagination and pure use becomes lower and becomes more a question of difference in degree than a question of difference in kind. So it's important that in a way we start to think about art in that sense in a different way, and start to see it more as a general site of inspiration, which can help us live a better life and help us face the enormous challenges that we have today, if you look at the fact that it's November and I'm wearing a t-shirt. So I think all these thoughts together maybe are for me one of the strongest reasons to make this shift, because in a very simple form, it will help us to be a better museum for the current moment and for the moment to come. And that's why I find it such a pleasure and privilege that we are able to make this step. I don't know if you've seen the collection already itself, but I can show you a few images of the exhibition that Liederwey and I made. You already saw the introduction film, I heard, but I saw that Bokja is also in the Zoom, so it's nice to show the work, how it stands in front of the work of Hussein Bar-Optekin. Here we see a work of Nacho Carbonell together with Svitas and Herman Nietzsche. Here you see a Hella. I quickly picked out the works from the people who were in the Zoom before, the vase of Hella, but also the Campana brothers. And here you see also the Dickies together with Pavel Büchler and several other works. I'm not sure if I should say much more about the exhibition, but what we did in the exhibition is we tried to create ensembles of works that we put in the different, in the 10 galleries of the museum, whereby we wanted to dissolve the barrier between design and art and create one type of imaginative plateau where, in a way, all these different beautiful cultural objects could exist together and have a dialogue with each other. And in that sense, also welcome the collection of art, not as a design collection into the museum, but to welcome it as just another member of the family, another member of the collection, who are able to talk with each other on an evil eye level. And so that has been also a pleasure to make. And I'm not sure how close you are to Eindhoven, but there's still one more week for you to be able to visit this nice exhibition. And I think I will, I've used up my 50 minutes. So I hope that this is well enough and gives some hope to you all.
Thank you, Stephen. It is very important to better understand why the museum is doing this and why other museums should follow, I think. And it's definitely a very brave step and in line with our times. So thank you, and thank you also for our work together. I hope you stay with us.